The demand withdrawal dynamic. This was actually the first that was discovered in research. And this is how it gets started. Assertive, decisive people tend to attract less certain, conflict-avoidant partners, and vice versa. So demand and withdrawal dynamic begins because those are the types of people that attract each other. One has a greater tolerance for ambiguity, but a harder time making decisions. The other makes decisions easily with less tolerance for ambiguity, so it's one way or the other. One likes to ease into decisions, sit on it for a while. The other pushes hard to make decisions at the moment. Now, how the dynamic actually evolves. One partner expresses feelings or opinions on an issue, and the other seems to agree, but really doesn't. In time, the dynamic hardens. One becomes verbally aggressive to try to coerce the other person, that's the demander, and the other grows passive aggressive, that's the withdrawer or the resistor. One feels deceived or disregarded, the other feels badgered or overwhelmed. One seeks control through criticism, complaints, and the complaints try to invoke guilt, shame, or anxiety. They're not just feeling sorry for yourself. And implied mental or moral superiority. And of course, coercion, that's punishment. Usually, though, it's withholding affection. I'm not going to love you if you don't meet my demands. The other seeks control through distraction, isolation, that is making the demander feel isolated, and sabotage. They set it up to fail, in other words. Each feels the other is controlling, rejecting, or abusive. Both feel powerless. Demanders see the issue as their partner's laziness, selfishness, unreliability, obstinacy, moodiness, sabotage, personality disorder. Withdrawers see the issue as their partner's lack of empathy, intolerance, need to control or dominate, and personality disorder. Both of them are likely to think their partners have personality disorders, and today they can go on the internet and diagnose their partners with these highly misleading schedule of symptoms. Illusions of personality disorder. Interviewed separately, neither seems to have a personality disorder. But interviewed together in the throes of an IRD, they both seem to have personality disorders. That tells you it's not really the personality, it's the dynamic between them. Now here's an example. Alyssa was furious when she saw the notice of a late penalty. I think it was for insurance. Frank had assured her that he paid the bill on time. The recurring issue for Alyssa is Frank's compulsion to lie. That's how she put it. For Frank, the recurring issue is that he can't own up to his mistakes. It would start a night-long onslaught of criticism, is what he said. They fought all night anyway about his lying and lack of integrity and her criticism and need to control. From their individual perspectives, they're both right. But from the dynamic perspective, they're both wrong. And that's because neither can see what the other reacts to. And they can't not say their lines. How can I not react the way he lies and hides things from me? How can I not hide things from her the way she overreacts? Now here are the day-to-day effects of demand withdrawal. Alyssa constantly looks for something Frank might think, feel, or do that will disappoint or raise her anxiety. See, we hate to be blindsided by any kind of bad news, but especially disappointment by a loved one. So we anticipate it, we look for evidence of it, and then that will usually become self-fulfilling prophecy. Frank tries to hide his thoughts and behavior to avoid her judgment and shaming criticism. So you can see how their reactions to each other are making them more extreme. One becomes more critical, demanding, controlling, self-righteous. The other grows sneakier, less truthful, less reliable. Both partners occasionally lash out with verbal abuse, but see themselves as merely reacting to the other's abuse. They will view any positive changes in behavior as temporary or deceptive. So if their partner starts behaving better, that's a trick or it's uncharacteristic. Each wants the other to change perceived personality traits. So it's not really about specific behaviors. That's why it can be attached to anything, no matter how trivial. Now there's a dramatic reversal at the end, and they tend to switch roles. When demanders give up, and eventually they do out of exhaustion, despair, or contempt, withdrawers pick up the slack with their own demands, prompting the original demander to disengage. Now here's an example. Melvin confronts his wife with insights he got from his therapist. Individual therapy often worsens IRDs because the therapist can't see the dynamic. All they are getting is what their client's telling them. Now, very skilled therapists will try to get their client to see the perspective of their partner, but in an effort to engage the partner, they are more likely to try to validate and inadvertently reinforce the false assumptions that the IRD makes us make of each other. So here's what Melvin now has arrived at after therapy. All these years, I thought I was just tired. That's what he used to say. Whenever she would ask, what are you feeling? What are you doing? He would just say, I'm just tired. So I thought I was tired, but I was really feeling neglected, burdened, taken advantage of, unappreciated, mistreated, and he went on and on. Now, Melvin's complaints are nearly identical to those of his formerly demanding partner before she decided to let go and move on. So that's an interesting reversal that happens a lot when a demand-withdrawal relationship is about to break up. And how it finally ends, if allowed to run its course. Now, we don't want it to run its course. That's the whole purpose. The accumulated guilt of criticizing a loved one and the shame of feeling devalued by a loved one create endless cycles of resentment, anger, hostility, or despair that exhaust the spirit and drain life from relationships.